Hello, this is Rick, and welcome back to the Space City X Files. We hope you enjoy episode 2 because, wow, so many twists and turns in this mystery. In this particular case, even stems over a time span of 124 years, possibly more, possibly thousands of years. Geologically, it has ties right here in the good old US of A, but it also reaches around the globe and even the universe. So the case has ties to one of the greatest minds in the world, a man named Mr. Nicola Tesla. If it feels like the beginning of a crazy riddle, don't worry about it. We ain't about that here. So without further ado, let's dive into the case of the Black Knight satellite. Wow, we got a doozy one for you today, folks. The Black Knight satellite. That name even sounds ominous as heck, right? So when I first heard of this story, it immediately piqued my interest because it's not one that I've heard about on other podcasts. In this line of work, the content is endless, but it's very rare that you come across something that's new to the ears, you know what I mean? Now, it's possible it could just be under a different name because there is another case that has more than a few similarities. But we'll get into that in a bit. Okay, the Black Knight satellite. What is it? Well, the word around town is that it's an ancient satellite of extraterrestrial origin that's in near polar orbit of Earth. Now, if you're wondering what the hell a near polar orbit is, a near polar orbit means the satellite passes near or just above both poles of the body being orbited. In this case, Earth, the Moon, or the Sun, on each revolution. Okay? It has an inclination of about 60 to 90 degrees to the body's equator. It's worth noting too, and this is interesting, that a satellite in a polar orbit is typically used for Earth mapping, reconnaissance, and I'm doing quotation fingers there, weather, and telecommunications. So yeah, I'll let you draw your own conclusions there. And so we have this satellite orbiting us, doing who knows what or why, and because around the time it was first reported by the U.S. Air Force in 1954, no other country at that time had the capability to launch a satellite that way, so that eliminated the possibility of it being enemy technology. It's theorized too that NASA apparently knows about the satellites and have been using it to communicate with the ETs. But of course, you can't prove it, so it's all hearsay. So now that we have a bit of understanding of what it is and a little detail on what it's supposed to be doing, let's backtrack. Some of the people involved in the case are definitely an interesting part of the story. It makes it really interesting. So we talked a little bit about Tesla earlier, so let's start there. When working these types of cases, I feel like when I name drop somebody of notoriety like Nicola Tesla, I instantly receive some of their coolness credibility. Does anybody else get that? Anybody? That's probably just me. This is probably as close as I'll ever get to being as cool as Tesla, telling the story about him. It's high school all over again. He's the athletic quarterback and I'm the guy holding the Gatorade bottles. But anyways, moving on. So Tesla enters our little web, and the time is 1899. It's a brisk one out in Colorado Springs. Tesla, sitting in his experimental station located at the highest point of Nob Hill, has been working away on his experiments for a new way to transmit electricity wirelessly. And at this time, that location that he was working at, it had a huge receiver antenna because he was working another experiment. And this experiment, what he was doing is he was working on, he was attempting to wirelessly transmit a telegraph from Pikes Peak, Colorado, all the way to Paris. And it's through this antenna that he received some strange transmissions, and those transmissions came in as 1 2 3 And so Tesla states that it wasn't immediately apparent to him that he was hearing something intelligent. It was only until afterwards that he realized that And then he said it was possible communication from another planet. And he went even further to say it was a communication to a extraterrestrial satellite. Now, from what we know, it's possible he was picking up interference from deep space, but we'll get into that later. So, Tesla stated that he was thoroughly convinced he had been receiving communication from Mars. And who knows? Who knows? Maybe he was right. If not from Mars, perhaps through a connecting satellite. Perhaps through the Black Knight satellite. And Tesla is the earliest known case that has been associated with the Black Knight. And it would not appear again until someone else experimenting with radio signals got a shocking surprise in 1927. So what we'll do is we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at the Jorgen Howes incident. Okay, be right back. And welcome back to Space City X-Files. Let's continue the investigation. So now Jorgen Howes' story is tied in with another man named Mr. Duncan Lunin, who comes involved some years later. But it starts with Jorgen, a Norwegian engineer. Experimenting with radio signals, he started picking up other signals from a Dutch shortwave transmitting station, which is normal up until that point, when he started receiving echoes of the original transmission. Now, even this is not too odd. Echoes occur, but we found that they usually occur about 1/7 of a second after the original transmission. And this is the amount of time it takes for a radio wave to travel around the Earth one time. Well, the crazy part about this is that old Jorgen starts noticing that it's taking 3 or 4 seconds for that echo to occur. And when it does occur, it's coming in with a severe drop in amplitude that wouldn't occur had it made multiple trips around the Earth. So what does this all mean? Well, Jorgen said, oh hell no. He didn't even begin to let his imagination take off on what this phenomena could be. He simply stated in a letter to another Norwegian physicist that he cannot conclude where the echoes come from. He could only confirm that he was there and he heard them. Now, that's the type of answer you give when you got to be careful about which side of the tracks you appear on, right? It's kind of vanilla the way he said that. And Tesla didn't give a damn, he straight up said, yo, this shit is for Martians. And it's funny because he received a lot of blowback from the science community for it, from his colleagues in his field, And so it makes you wonder, like, how many things go unreported or people stay silent because of pressure to avoid being seen as a believer. Right? So after Jorgen's findings, nobody to this day has been able to explain without a doubt what happened in his case. That is until Duncan Lunin comes busting through the door of science. Duncan was straight to the point. In a 1973 article for Spaceflight magazine, he says, yeah, I know exactly where those echoes are coming from. And he further explains that it's from a 13,000-year-old alien object that has been orbiting around the Earth or the Moon. Now, this is the first time that he has mentioned this, okay? But it's not the first time that somebody has alluded to a satellite watching us or orbiting around us, okay? And although he didn't say where he got this information, and without exactly saying the name Black Knight satellite, the theorists were able to make that connection for him. But Duncan didn't stop there. He had another bomb to drop. And after saying he knew what the signal was, he went on to say he knew where the signal was coming from. He knew its exact location. He stated that the orbital object was in the Epsilon Bootes, which is a star constellation. And when I read that, I was like, oh shit, yeah, of course, the Epsilon Bootes. It's been there the whole damn time. Like, how silly were we to overlook the Epsilon Bootes? I personally don't know how I could have overlooked it, since that's the same location my keys go every time they want to get lost. But no, really, I was like, wait, what the hell is the Epsilon Bootes? In short, the Epsilon is a binary star in the northern constellation of Bootes. And we learn something new every day. That was the more you know moment for basically X-Files podcast. And so now Duncan shares how he came about his information. He's going to share that with us. So y'all remember old Georgie that discovered those wacky echoes that no one to this day can explain? Well, guess who explained them? If you guessed Duncan, then you guessed correctly. Duncan claims to have deciphered the messages, and it reads like this. Start here. Stop. I'm sorry. Oh, that was a period. Start here, period. Our home is in Upsilon Bootes, which is a double star, period. We live on the 6th planet of 7th, coming from the sun, which is the larger of the two, period. Our 6th planet has 1 moon. Our 4th planet has 3. Our 1st and 3rd planets each have 1, period. Our probe or satellite is in the position of Arcturus, known in our maps. And they end the transmission. Or that's the end of the cipher. So lots of information there, right? I mean, but wow, I mean, they were descriptive and talkative too. I didn't know they would be so talkative in Bootes. I did a quick search on Arcturus, which is where their probe is, and it's the name of a star in Bootes, or boats. If I'm not saying that right, you have to look it up and find it out for yourself, because I don't know. And so it's not out of the ordinary, but the name is interesting. So Arcturus is the Latin version of the Greek word Arctoros, meaning guardian of the bear. And even in an older Greek language, it's translated bear watcher. And what's the connection here? So there's been a lot of theories outside of this one. And it says that ETs have been watching us for a long time. Okay, they make appearances, but it's the way they make appearances that led people to this conclusion. And so what happens is that it seems like, a lot of the stories, in a lot of the stories, they have appeared at times where there was a lot of dangerous circumstances going on, like the Cold War. So they have appeared in times of war, and they have appeared in times where there was a chance of nuclear fallout. And so, is it too much of a stretch to think that these particular extraterrestrials are in charge of watching over the Earth, or maybe watching over us? Are we the bear, and are they the watchers? So speeding down the rabbit hole on that one, but we don't have that much time to linger, so we have a lot to consider. And so that concludes Duncan's claims. And he did say something after that, and it was kind of crazy, but he said even he made those statements, but he did walk it back. He walked back those statements, and then he tried to distance himself from the 13,000-year-old watcher idea, but only to come back later and say, okay, I was mistaken, but not by much. And he made a new claim with just a couple of changes, but it was basically the same thing, and he claimed that this one was spot on. He goes, now this one is mistake free, right? Like last time I missed it by that much, is basically what Duncan said. And I don't think people gave him the same platform like they did last time. They were like, nah, you screwed up, Duncan. Now it's time for somebody else to come in. And after Duncan, we got to fast forward about 50 years to 1998 for the next substantial account that would imply that the Black Knight satellite exists. Now, this case right here, it also would produce the first ever picture of the supposed ET satellite. That's right. We're going to get a picture of it this time, folks. In 1998, the United States have a space mission set, and it is one of grand importance in regard to the future of space exploration. Mission STS-88 would be the first space shuttle mission to the International Space Station. And the Endeavour spacecraft would also be bringing along the very first American module called Node 1 that would lay the groundwork for further development on the American portion of the International Space Station. And there's another the more you know moment. So now that we've done our quick little history lesson, it's important to note that the main goal of the International Space Station is to become a docking point, a laboratory for the advancement of furthering our deep space explorations. And so, is it a coincidence that when the Americans show up, one superpower of our known world shows up to start building their portion that's going to advance deep space exploration, that this object is photographed? I don't know. We'll find out. And so everything on the mission, it pretty much went as it should. It was in and out, had a few hiccups, but nothing to worry anyone. But it was when the crewmate noticed something ominously hovering over the Earth that he started to snap pictures. And these pictures depicted a black spacecraft satellite type object. And once this was brought to the attention and the others became aware, it was then stated that, oh shit, we forgot to tell you, a thermal blanket used to cover the connection point for the newly docked Node 1 had come loose and drifted out away from the space station. Now apparently there was talks with NASA about whether to retrieve it or not, but one of the crew members said, hell no, I ain't going near that thing. And it was ultimately decided to leave it be. And NASA said, in a few weeks it's going to drop into Earth's atmosphere and it will burn away anyways. And there's no proof that ever happened, but that's what they said. Now, I mean, at this point, this still does not prove nor disprove, in my opinion. But what didn't help NASA's case is that when people started visiting their website to view the picture, a pesky website update deleted the original links, and although it was later brought back, many say that alterations were made to that picture, to the new picture. And I don't know, I just hate those damn website updates. They just come at the wrong time, And so finally, our last and most recent discovery is the Oumuamua phenomena. And in 2017, a man named Robert Work, hope I'm saying that right, discovered the anomaly, which is the first interstellar object to pass through the solar system. Now, and I encourage you to research this of how rare this is. This is the first time this has ever happened. We've been exploring space for a long time now, and this is the first thing that something has ever came from interstellar space into our solar system. Okay, and so and Robert Work was the one that reported it. So Robert is a Canadian physicist and an astronomer, and was using the Pan-STARRS telescope at the Haleakala Observatory in Maui, Hawaii. Now, the object is described as an elongated and most likely a rubble-like pile that travels at a tumble more than a spin. Okay, that's what the scientists say. They put their coats on, they looked at their little telescope, and they said, yeah, that's a rubble pile, no big deal. It just found its way over here, this pile of rock. But regarding the shape, what they said was a theory too, basically. Okay, because another test was performed. In this test, they used light they beam light at it, basically to find what shape it is. Okay, so they beam light, and they were able to map the object out. And it was at that point that they found it was elongated, but it wasn't a pile of rock. Okay, it was smooth and dense. It doesn't look like a rubble pile. Okay, and based off the description and the fact that it has been seen having the capability of non-gravitational acceleration with no trail from an ignition source, I can kind of see how it'd be a possible match for the Black Knight satellite. Now, I'm no astrophysicist, so if you take my opinion with a grain of salt, I can't blame you for that. I can't blame you at all. And you should do your own research to find out. But I have done a little bit for you. And I'm no astrophysicist, but if having an astrophysicist back this claim If that'll help you determine what you believe this anomaly to be, then I feel like it's my duty to provide one, and I did provide one, okay? And that's the least I can do for all y'all. You know, I appreciate my appreciation for you even listening to this podcast, because you guys are what I do it for. And so, during my research of the Oumuamua, I found a man named Avi Loeb. Okay, Avi is a theoretical physicist at the University of Harvard, and he's actually right now the longest tenured professor there. Okay, and he works on astrophysics and cosmology. Okay, so he did an interview with Joe Rogan's podcast about the Oumuamua phenomenon, and I love his point of view. I love what he believes it can be. Okay, for one, if you're here listening, it's probably because you have an interest about things that can't easily be explained away, which is great, because I'm the same way. The part that drives me kind of crazy is when we have phenomena in space, especially. I feel like most of the scientists, people smarter than we are, they look for the very first opportunity to explain it away. And in these explanations, they use the words like probably and likely. And so what that tells me is in reality, their explanation is just a theory too. But I've read somewhere where other scientists were saying that, you know, they try their best to stay clear of pseudoscience and unexplained phenomena. And when they do offer their opinion on it, they would rather be wrong about something that has actual science to back it up, instead of being wrong about something that has no backing in our world, right? And this is where Avi Loeb is different. You know, he's different than his colleagues. He used the story of Galileo, for example. If you're not familiar with that story, let me give you a quick rundown. When Galileo first tried to explain that the sun sits motionless while the Earth and other planets revolve around it, you know, people just lost their shit. You know, it was up until that point, he was supported by the church and the Jesuits, but whenever he presented his findings, they sent him to the Inquisition, and they prosecuted him. You know, they're like, this is nonsense. Like they charged him with heresy. And it was at that point that he was forced into house arrest for the remainder of his life. That man died on house arrest. And we all know now, looking back, that he was right. You know, so this is a great example that we can still learn from today. That when we're faced with something that we do not understand, you know, we shouldn't hide from it or try to blindly explain it away. I mean, we shouldn't do that. We should not do that. And we shouldn't scoff at anyone who offers a viable explanation for what it could be, you know? We must keep an open mind. I'm sorry about those noises too, if you heard those. I'll try to get them out later. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Okay. Alright, so we must keep an open mind. And well, here we have the main findings of the case of the Black Knight satellite. And although, as I said before in our podcast, when we present the facts, okay? That's what we want to do. We want our listeners to be thoroughly informed about the mysteries out there, and that wouldn't happen if we didn't present both sides, okay? So what we're going to do is we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at the opposition's case against the Black Knight satellite. We'll be right back. Alright, welcome back to Space City X-Files. This is Rick, and today we're here speaking about the mysterious Black Knight satellite. And now we've heard a ton of facts about why and how it could exist, and so now it's that time of the podcast where we look at the other side, okay? And the most common fact that people use to poke holes into the story, poke holes in it, is the history of it itself, okay? So because no one can really explain where the name came from or why it's used to reference the satellite, and that's meaning, why do they use the term Black Knight satellite? A I don't know. Maybe they just thought it sounded cool or scary or some shit. I don't know. But the earliest use of the name would have been with Duncan Lunan, which is all the way up in the 70s, and not 1899 and not 1927. And so because of this, people would say the claims that Tesla and Jorgen made would not be able to be verified, or if they were even referring to the Black Knight. And it's also further distorted the history of the Black Knight satellite when Lunan walked back the story the first time, right? He walked it back about the 13,000-year-old orbiting object. Oh, I never said that. Well, you screwed it up for everybody. And it was at this time also that he even denied claiming that he ever used that term, Black Knight satellite. He said he never said it. Okay, so it's the same case with the Oumuamua, and that's because the founder, or nobody for that fact, came out right and said, yeah, this is the Black Knight satellite. So, and people also denied the connection there also. They said, no, this is not in relation. So that's the main argument. Because of the history of the Black Knight, and because it was supposedly pulled from so many different stories across too large of a span of time, the debunkers say that it's too large of a leap of faith. Okay, they say that it couldn't be. They can't be all connected. And one prominent astrophysicist even stated that, he says, hey, like, you know, all these occurrences are astounding and beautiful with mystery. He says the Black Knight theory speaks more about the imagination of humans than anything of extraterrestrial origin. And so if you weren't following that in layman terms, that means y'all tripping. That's basically what he said. Y'all got good imaginations. And, you know, I hate to admit it, but he makes a good point. I mean, it's like we discussed earlier, when things are unexplainable, people would rather have faith that it's something that has been proven. It can be proven with science that we know, or it's already been proven but in another way. Okay, but I'll tell you this right now, that either way, when something can't be proven in the way that you would prefer it, it takes faith and a personal choice to decide what you believe, right? And nobody can do that for you. You know, you should make that choice yourself. But in the show notes, I'm going to post that interview that Avi Loeb had with Rogan about the Oumuamua. And I encourage you to watch it, because not only does he break down clearly what the object has been doing in space, he really gives testament as to what keeping an open mind is like. And spoiler alert, Avi does refer to the object as likely being a satellite of alien technology. So he ain't scared. He came right out and said that shit. And I respect that man for that. That's it takes guts. And it's funny because one of the colleagues he was working the case with, at this point, he was upset with Avi. He said openly to Avi, he said, I wish this object had never appeared. And he's talking about the Oumuamua. And Avi was blown away by that. You know, like, God, how could you wish that something this wonderful had never appeared? And without a doubt, he said it out of frustration. And Loeb goes on to say that the man said that because he does not like being out of his comfort zone. And really that this anomaly was outside of the man's knowledge. It's outside of all our knowledge, because we can't explain it, and people don't like to be that way either. And while we're talking about the Oumuamua anomaly, I'm going to go on and let you know how they came to the determination that although they could not explain what it is, they know for a fact that it's not the Black Knight. So, despite the Oumuamua having a non-gravitational acceleration, meaning it propelled itself without an ignition source or without leaving a vapor trail, they claim it still could be a comet or an asteroid, or, this one's funny, even an extremely thin, shiny piece of space trash. That's what you are. Has anybody ever called you that? You're an extremely thin, shiny piece of space trash. Ouch, but no, but yeah, that's right, trash. They said it can be trash. One scientist claims that at one point before, NASA had lost the housing of an afterburner when it became separated in space during a mission. It was later that they discovered the object through the telescope, witnessed it propel itself without an ignition source. It was able to accomplish this because it was so thin and light and shiny that the light from solar rays were its power source. They're even working on equipping crafts these days with a type of shiny, thin sail that would allow light to move the ship instead of ignition source. And this is a valid point. This is they almost had us there. But only that the Oumuamua, after using light to inspect it, has shown to be incredibly thick. It's dense. And it's flat. It's not hollow. So, this is not comparable to a piece of thin, light, hollow space trash. Yet still, they come back and say, so it may not be space trash, but it can still be a comet or an asteroid. And the ignition source or a trail vapor may just not be viewable from telescope. Aha! Got you there, huh? Not quite. You see, when a comet or asteroid propels itself with an internal ignition source, although it may not show a vapor trail, but it will start to change shape and size and density rapidly because it's consuming itself. But the Oumuamua, having demonstrated propulsion many times, has not changed in density or size, which means that should rule that out, right? No, not according to skeptics. And it goes back and forth like this for a while. So what we'll do is we'll put that to rest for now. But please, if you're interested in the Oumuamua, do some research, do your own investigating. You won't be sorry. It's very, very interesting. And watch those videos too that we're going to have in the show notes. And we spoke on the debunking of the history origin. Now we also spoke about the explanation of the Oumuamua anomaly. And now we'll move on to the last few points that can make a case that the Black Knight satellite is simply a good story. And so the first debunk is with Georgian Howes. Okay? Now, Howes did everything he could to not be associated with ET theories. But he seemed to got drug into it anyways. Although he never claimed any extraterrestrial happening, he simply said, I don't know what it is, honestly. But, and so with the advancement of technology, Howes' findings should seem rather easy to explain, right? It happened in 1927. We're in 2023. Surely somebody has already cracked this case, right? Wrong. To this day, no one can confidently say, I know what happened with Howes' experience. Though they've come up with a better possibility. And they say they even had something happen in another case. And they say, so an astrophysicist claimed that what happened in the case of Georgian Howes was he picked up on interference from a solar storm in deep space. Or the radio signal was traveling all the way to Jupiter, on the rings. It went around and somehow miraculously returned, which would explain the drop in amps that was discovered whenever the signal was returning. And lastly, without having knowledge of them in Jorgen's times, Jorgen didn't know about this, it's possible that pulsars were the culprit in this case. But even though these arguments they have good points, the technology has proven that they are possibilities, it's still just a possibility. Okay, so we can't really say fully or confidently what it is. And the last debunk is aimed at Mr. Tesla's claims. And I gotta say, out of all the reasons behind the possibility of these occurrences, this one here does make a bit of sense. These debunks. But this kind of makes me sad because I wanted to believe Tesla. I really do. For one reason, because out of everyone in these stories, other than Avi Loeb, Tesla's the only one who stated his claim and stayed true to that shit. He didn't walk anything back. He just blazed that trail. But here's the issue with Tesla's anomaly. And so at the time Tesla was working with this huge ass antenna, trying to send wireless telegraphs from Pikes Peak, Colorado to Grand Ole Prairie. That's all great and fine. The only issue with that was there is a guy working on the exact same thing in Europe, Mr. Marconi. He was working on something similar, and in Marconi's experiment, he was using the letter S. He was transmitting that letter S, which would have appeared as dot, space, 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 dot, space, 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 dot, space, space, space. Now compare that to Mr. Tesla's 1, space, 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 2, space, 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 3, space, 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 that he heard from the Martians. Is that too much of a coincidence? I don't know. Nonetheless, this is also just a theory, and it's never been proven without a doubt. But that shit don't faze Tesla. He was like, I don't give a damn what you say. These were Martians. They'll come pick me up. We're going to go have dinner or lunch or something. We'll have some fun. And so, there you have it. There you have it, friends. Those are all the facts. They've been laid out. We did our best to research them and present them with confidence to help those interested fully understand what the case is about. And now we have arrived at the summary conclusion. And for humor, I'll offer my opinion on the matter. Okay? So I must admit, as much as I hate to, that I'm somewhat finding myself at times overly skeptical about things that can't be explained by the physical premises of our world. As with the previous case, episode 1, the simulation hypothesis. You know, I just couldn't see in that one how it could happen. Even after reading all the evidence and all the bright minds that support the theory, I just couldn't do it. But in this case here, I have to say that I am buying it. I feel like 3 out of the 4 occurrences we talked about not being able to be explained to satisfaction, at least for my taste, that something outside of what man and nature can do is there being done. The Oumuamua case is mainly what makes me feel this way. That, combined with the interview with Avi Loeb, I feel like the Black Knight satellite or something like it is there. Another thing that draws me to that conclusion is take our race, our human race, for example. Now, although we're top of the evolutionary ladder, we've come a long way from the Dark Ages. We're still kind of primitive when you really look at the full picture. Even still, we've been able to put satellites in orbit since the 50s. And the first chance we got to use them for reconnaissance and counter surveillance against our adversaries, we did it. Why? For national security, of course. Which is true. We must use our means to ensure our own safety. Now, are these satellites being used for things outside of the benefit of our own security? Yeah, more than likely. Probably. But we need them, and that's the whole point. We need them for our early warning systems. We need them to guard us against nukes. So if we would do it for security purposes, and if there's another intelligent life form out there that knows we are here, the probability of them doing it themselves would outweigh the chances of them not, in my opinion. But hey, that's just my opinion. So what about you? After hearing all these facts, how do you feel about the Black Knight satellite? Do you feel like the unnamed astrophysicist who said, although these anomalies are outstanding, they speak more to the imagination of the human mind than of another intelligent life form? Or do you feel like Avi Loeb and Tesla and are 100% convinced that we have not only been monitored by alien life form, but we've communicated with them? Even maybe perhaps even unknowingly. Well, I guess the future holds the keys to these questions. Thank you for listening to the Space City X-Files, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you again for listening to episode 2 of Space City X-Files. We appreciate your time and hope you were entertained by the mysteries surrounding the case of the Black Knight satellite. Episode 3 will be dropping next Wednesday, but we'll give a few glimpses of what we have in store between now and then. We appreciate your support, and will continue to do in-depth research and investigations to continue shedding light on this world's great mysteries. If you would like to become a supporter of the show, there are 2 main ways that would help us out so much. Number 1, wherever you're listening, there should be a review link by the show notes. Please take the time and let us know how much you enjoyed yourselves. Those reviews go a long way and help us bring in more listeners. Number 2, if you would like to help the show with donations, you can visit the website and click on the Patron tab. There you can become a member, and when you do, that gives you instant access to extra content, access to Discord groups for direct contact, and even free show merchandise. So we'll hook you up with free swag. But no matter how you choose to support, we appreciate it all the same. We love you all, and we'll see you on the next show.